Alongside Bryan Hayes. Hazer, Leafs camp has been a bit of a roller coaster right now. Matthews, Tavares, Nylander, they've all been hurt on and off. We've seen it in the NFL. Stars entering the season without the proper prep time they needed, and then things didn't go well. As somebody who follows the Leafs and has been following them now for literally decades, are you concerned at all for the Leafs and what they're going to look like coming out of the gate, given the fact they've been hobbled on so many different fronts so far?
No, I don't think so, Gino, because of the guys that we're talking about. The guys who are banged up, so to speak, or at least in flux in terms of where they're going to play or how they're going to play, are their best players and are the guys that I really don't concern myself with when it comes to the regular season. It'll be a different story in the playoffs. I'm not worried about Austin Matthews. I'm not worried about John Tavares. William Nylander's a different story because they got to figure this out, right? They do have to figure out, is he playing center? Is he going to play the wing? Are you going to drive it into the season? Personally, I think it's a waste of time. I don't see him as a center. The guy's been in the league for 8 years, and look what he's done. Right, he has 40 goals in back-to-back years. He had almost 100 points. They paid him over $90 million as a winger. So I think they need to get him back on the straight and narrow, say you're playing on the wing, and we got to figure out what's going to be an issue up the middle of the ice. But I think ultimately, in terms of the vibes of the camp, the goalies have looked pretty good, and they've been healthy. The defense, which is always a question mark, has looked pretty good, and they've been healthy. So ultimately, I think that is really what needs to be driven home here, is it's not about wins and losses. It's not about your best players having nicks and bruises. They'll be fine. It's can you find some consistency on the back end, and where is the mindset of these goaltenders? Because I think those are the biggest question marks coming in. And ultimately, those will be answered between now and opening night. If they all stay healthy and they're all on the ice come opening night, whatever happened the previous 2.5, 3 weeks, I think that will be irrelevant in the end.
Hazer, I don't want to poke the bear, but I got to ask you about Willie Nylander at center. This whole, they almost looked at him last year. They almost looked at him again this year. What are they doing? You can't seriously say we're giving this guy a serious look at center for as little time as they're giving him opportunity. Is this Nylander behind closed doors, do you think, saying, guys, this is ridiculous. Will you just leave me on the wing? Is this finally a non-starter? Why are they even doing this?
I honestly, Gino, I think it is a waste of time. I think that William Nylander is willing to test it out. I would guess that he leans towards being where he's comfortable and, again, where he's been a superstar in this league, which is on the wing. And I think ultimately that's where he's going to end up. This is clearly about two different things. It's a Brad Treliving issue. Brad Treliving is the one that I think pushed it on Sheldon Keefe last year when he first arrived. And now that Keefe is out and Berube's in, he's pushing it on Berube. And the reason why he's pushing it is because the Leafs are telling the world that they don't have a second-line center. Right? They're basically telling John Tavares and everyone else that wants to listen, they don't believe they have a championship caliber second line center, and I would agree with that. And that gets back to your previous question about where the vibes are at and where where this team is going leading into the season. I don't have any concerns about them in the regular season. I think they have a lot of depth. I think they're a good team. They're a veteran team. Craig Berube is a good coach. They'll figure that out. But the questions that are popping up here in the preseason will be alive come the postseason. And again, the reason they're trying to pigeonhole William Nylander into the center of the ice and possibly put him in a position of discomfort is because they're telling the NHL John Tavares can't win a cup as a second-line center. He might as a third-line center. Maybe he goes to the wing at some point, which is also something that they've tested out the last couple of years once they got past the trade deadline. But that's ultimately what this is, Gino. This is them trying to find a true elite championship caliber second-line center. And if it's not Willie, and I think they've told us it's not Tavares, then who's that going to be?
All right, then here's another big question for you. What the heck's going on with Nick Robertson? Here's a guy who didn't feel like the team was going to give him a real shot at a top 6 spot up front for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So he wanted out. They said, no, sign this deal. We'll try to figure things out with you here. Now he comes out and shines. He's had a great preseason. Where do you think this goes? Do you think Nick Robertson has finally said, I'm too good for you guys to unload? Or has this just helped the Leafs be able to make some kind of move to move his dollars off the books?
I think it leans more towards the latter, Gino. I still believe that it leans more towards the latter because they actually have a lot of options on the wing. And I get the impression among Leaf fans, just talking with them anecdotally, that that's the conversation that comes up the most. right? We got to figure out what's going to happen with Nylander. But let's say Nylander starts in the middle of the ice, Tavares is third-line center, they keep Camp, and Camp is your fourth-line center. Then you got to figure out what's going to happen with Nick Robertson, like you said. What happens with Max Pacioretty? What happens with Pontus Holmberg, who's a decent player that I think Berube likes? What happens with Ryan Reeves? What happens with Bobby McMahon? You've got a lot of options here. Steven Lorentz, are they going to keep him? If so, where does he fit in? So Robertson needs to determine, and what he needs to push forward and what he needs to convince Berube is that when he's not scoring goals, and he clearly can, and you referenced it, this guy's scoring every night in the preseason. Last year he had a bunch of goals. His goals per minute, pretty close to elite. What are you doing when you're not scoring those goals, though? Because he at no point is going to push Matthews, Marner, Nylander, or Tavares off the first power play or off the 6-on-5 late in the game opportunity. So if you're talking about a player that's going to play 8 to 10 minutes 5-on-5 on the third line, what is he doing when he's not scoring goals? I still don't have that answer. I don't know if Berube does. I don't know if Trey Living does, but they better find out quick. Because if he gets placed on waivers, he's getting picked up. Someone will pick him up. Yeah. If you're going to trade him, I don't know what you're going to get back. And you're risking, if you move off him going somewhere else and turning into that 30-goal scorer that you can put on the second line, even if he's not great defensively, even if he's not overly physical. He may be a guy that can score 30 and 60-plus points. Those are valuable pieces, especially when they're young and they're cheap. So they got a week to figure this out because he has looked good in camp. But I don't think it's simply about can you score goals. I think they know the answer on that. It's can you defend? Can you play 5-on-5? Can you sit on the bench for a long time because you're not playing power play and you're not killing penalties? They got to find those answers out. I don't have them for you right now, Gino. I don't think anybody does, but they got a week to figure it out. And I think it's coming down to Robertson, Pacioretty, McMahon, like they're fighting for spots. And what's also been determined through all this, Easton Cowan is going back to London. I think it's just a formality at this point. I don't think he's played great, and it's probably in his best interest to go back. But they do have a lot of options. But it's tricky, man. This is why you have camps. This is why you have whiteboards. This is why you have depth charts. It's on Brad Treliving and Craig Berube to pick the right guys.
I can't imagine Patches going anywhere but the Leafs opening day roster, which then means what are they going to do with Nick Robertson? And if they move him, does he come back to haunt them down the road? Thanks, Brian.